Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 58 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers and follow us on social media /the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by jazzsports.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit Jazz Sports and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions and location apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor the podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, I am back from the whale's vagina, and it was a fantastic vacation. Lots of beach, no rain, some fantastic weather. Kids drove us a little nuts from time to time, but overall, very successful. Was able to watch some great football. Had the TVs going inside the place, the tablets going on the beach. Just had a fantastic all-around time. Football turned out well, 5-3 in college. It's looking like we will be 4-3 in the NFL if this teaser hits. I think it'll hit. I mean, if the Saints lose outright, we won't hit it. But we also hit that money line sprinkle on the Kansas City Las Vegas game. We are on Las Vegas plus the 12.5 and hit the sprinkle there. So was happy that turned out. Those sprinkles really help you when you are, even for the weekend. If one of your dogs hit and you hit that sprinkle, it's a nice plus money pop. College, we are 5th ranked, it looks like, on Sports Wash Monitor out of 60 college handicappers that are active. 28 for 19, up $5,542. Of course, that's how they track it. I enter our picks. Sometimes we can't enter all our picks, like halftime derivatives, any prop bets that we decide to take on players. So that's not completely accurate. We're actually doing a little bit better than that in college. NFL, not as much. We are a little bit down in the NFL. Sports Watch Monitor has us at 17-22. But NFL is getting better, and we're excited to have a great mid-season here. Keep pushing on. As you know, last year we were up over 50 units in the NFL, so I'm really excited for that to get back to normal. We have a great show for you today. We're going to do our normal motivational spots, misleading final scores in the NFL and college, and get into fantasy football back on track with D Nasty here. Before that, I want to do a little bit of a recap for the college and the NFL. The biggest games were Miami versus Clemson. Unfortunately for Miami, the worst thing that could happen for their type of speed offense is the rain. They rely on their quarterback, De'Aaron King, to get his footing. They rely on him to pass the ball a lot, and the rain is not good for that. And Clemson's running game was just fantastic. Etienne himself had 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. De'Aaron King led Miami in rushing at 84 yards, but Cameron Harris, he was injured at some point in the game, carried only 8 times for 3 yards. You can just see that there wasn't much rushing going on for the Miami Hurricanes. As a matter of fact, they only ran the ball 11 times with people not named De'Aaron King. On the flip side of the thing, Clemson rushed 44 times. 8 of them were Trevor Lawrence, but they just dominated Miami on the ground. The score 42-17 wasn't even that close, really. Miami got lucky with an extra point, a long field goal block to move that thing to an 11-point deficit rather than a 18-point deficit coming into the half. So, yeah, Miami got beat. It was pretty bad. I wonder if it would be any different if it didn't rain, if they would have covered the 14.5, 15 points. that thing was at 15. It dropped down to 14, and it kind of closed at 14.5. But most likely not. Clemson's just, they've impressed me with their defense. I didn't think their defense was going to be this far along as this came along, and I had to upgrade Clemson in my power ratings once again. I believe I have them as the second best team behind Ohio State now, and we haven't even seen Ohio State play yet. Another huge game, well, I suppose SEC games, Tennessee versus Georgia. Tennessee was actually leading at the half, and then Georgia scored 27 unanswered points in that game. So props to Georgia there. Obviously an extremely good team. Georgia looks like they are the only team in the SEC really with a defense. I thought Florida's defense would be a little bit better, but this was the other upset. Texas A&M upsets Florida at home. Huge top 5 win for them. Huge for their coach, Jimbo Fisher. But at the same time, they're only a 6-point dog to Florida at home. And it was at 7, and that thing came down to 6 with some sharp money. So, in my opinion, I didn't want to touch it because I didn't love what Kellen Mond was doing. And all of a sudden, Kellen Mond played out of his mind. 25 for 35, 338 yards, 3 TDs. I was shocked that he was able to do that good, but Texas A&M at home is a lot different than Texas A&M on the road, and so we're going to be excited to see what happens to them this weekend here. Notre Dame took care of Florida State, but one thing I will say is Florida State somehow did look better in the second half, only allowing 7 points to Notre Dame, but they only scored 6 themselves. North Carolina took care of Virginia Tech by 11. So that spread kept dropping all the way down to 3 points. It was at 6. North Carolina was favored. Then it goes all the way down to 3. A lot of bettors lost on Virginia Tech there. It was at North Carolina. Sam Howell's was fantastic. 3 TDs, 257 yards. So I am high on Virginia Tech, but they're going to be a favorite this week against Boston College. Auburn, Arkansas. Bo Nix threw a pass behind him to spike the ball, and there's some weird rule. They talked about the fact that he didn't really grab possession of the fumble, making him spike the ball. I'm very confused about that still. I've never seen anything like that. So they called it incomplete. I almost say that, maybe he should have, if they didn't have possession when he spiked the ball behind him, they still should have called that a backwards pass. In my opinion, I think it's just very strange how they interpreted that, and I wonder if they have it right. They said it wasn't a clear recovery, I suppose, at the very end of it by the Razorbacks. They need to be better. The officials need to be better. It's worse in the NFL, but this was the game for Arkansas. This was a huge game for them, and to have a massive mistake like that happen in the final seconds of a game is unacceptable. It just really is. What else do we have here? We have BYU only beat UTSA by 7 points. That was interesting. UTSA can stop the run a little bit better, and that's what I assumed. That's why we took the under 63 as a premium play. I was happy that went through, part of our 5 wins that we had. And Missouri beat LSU. That was another upset here. Not really surprising for me. I mean, LSU is a completely different team. Missouri's hungry at this moment, right? They need a win. Missouri isn't a team I'm going to be excited to bet on this year against anybody, But LSU could be a good fade team. But Florida's already a 13.5 to 14-point favorite here at home against LSU. You wonder how much money is going to be coming in on LSU because of that. That seems like a pretty large spread, even for, an LSU team that's pretty new, because they still have a lot of good recruits. Texas versus Oklahoma. Didn't get to watch a lot of this, but I did see the replays. Oklahoma did, dominate Texas on the ground. Texas was just kind of behind most of the game until halftime. Then, then it's tied, but then they're behind in the third quarter. Oklahoma outscored them 14-0, and they made some stupid mistakes, but that's just what Texas does. Oklahoma had 208 yards rushing, and Texas had 141 yards rushing. Quarterbacks played pretty pretty comparable to each other. Spencer Rattler and Sam Ehlinger. Sam Ehlinger's been around longer, so he threw that final interception in overtime. As a matter of fact, this thing, I believe, went over the total because of overtime. 31-31, it was 62. Yep. So anyone with the under had a bad beat on that sucker. Iowa State took care of Texas Tech. So there you go. Real excited for not this weekend. I am excited for the Alabama-Georgia game, and I'll be discussing that in detail later on this week with the second podcast of the week, and Kyle Hunter and I will probably touch on that game during our Better Odds Sports Betting YouTube and Twitch channel show. Let's get into some NFL. And some NFL, it's really interesting. Some of these 4-1 teams and some of these 1-4 teams, how you have to look at them. It's some of the 4-1 teams are not quite as good as 4-1, and some of the 1-4 teams or 1-3-1 teams aren't as bad as that record either. And I want to talk a little bit about that. First, obviously, the big upset was Kansas City losing to the Raiders. Kansas City's just weird. When they hit a division game, sometimes they just don't show up. I don't know why that is. They can blow out everybody else, including Baltimore, and then against the Chargers, they lose. That was one of our premium plays, was being on the Raiders. As a matter of fact, I think that was a free play, too. I'm pretty sure it was, that we gave out. Really good in the free plays. College was 3-0, and one game didn't play. The FAU game didn't play. And in the pros, 2-1 with the teaser on the way here. So we got the Saints down to -1.5. So pretty good weekend here. Obviously, the big injury was Dak Prescott. Saw his ankle turn completely 90 degrees to the side. He tried to pop it back himself, and it just went right back. I mean, he literally broke his ankle bad. It just didn't dislocate. And it looks like he's getting fixed up, and looks like he's going to miss the rest of the season. But the good news is, if everything heals right, he should be back even for, OTAs in the spring and in the summer. So, that's good for Dak. Not so sure how good it's for his contract. Funny thing about Andy Dalton coming in, and I talked a lot about Andy Dalton, if you remember, before the season started. I said that he's not as bad as teams, or as people, think he is, as teams that, went out and tried to sign him, right? So I think that Andy Dalton is actually comparable to Dak. He's had good seasons with the Bengals. I mean, let's go back to 2012, 27 TDs, 16 interceptions. 2013, he was 33 TDs, 20 interceptions. 2014, not so good, 19 TDs, 17 interceptions. 2015, 25 TDs, 7 interceptions. 2016, 18 TDs, 8 interceptions. 2017, he had 25 TDs and 12 interceptions. 2018, 21 and 11, and then he had that bad year in 2019, 16 and 14. But, I mean, looking at what Dak's done, I don't see much of a downgrade here, and we're probably going to have to talk more about this coming into the NFL games for this weekend. So I don't think the loss is as big as people think for the Cowboys, but it is what it is. Horrible injury for Dak. This game, the Bears started out against the Tampa Bay Bucks, and that was an interesting game on Thursday. I'm a Bear fan, as you remember, but the Bears are 4-1, and this might be one of those teams I'm going to talk about here. I believe that hit on Nick Foles wasn't an illegal hit for that they threw on the Tampa Bay Bucks that kept that drive alive where the Bears kicked the field goal. I believe that the officials kind of influenced that game to where the Bears won it. Now, at the same time, maybe the Bears would have covered the spread. There's just kind of some bad calls on both sides. But at the same time, the Bears are going to be a topic for discussion in a lot of sports shows, being at 4-1 coming into the week. One of our losers, the Panthers at the Falcons. The Falcons just couldn't even win in a huge spot here against a rival that they blew out the last couple years. I know there was no Julio, but they still have Calvin Ridley, a couple other guys that they have, Todd Gurley, Russell Gage. It's not like they don't have anyone. Hayden Hurst. and they couldn't even win at home against Carolina. Carolina is better than people said from the beginning of the season. Carolina with a nice 3-2 tear. They went 0-2, and then they just won 3 in a row, going on the road too. I believe that they have 2 wins on the road. Great job for this team, and they're pretty dangerous. Mike Davis has proven that he is no downgrade from Christian McCaffrey. Maybe in fantasy football, you can say that because CMC was the number 1 guy, but the way they use CMC, Christian McCaffrey, the Panthers, is the way they're using Mike Davis. So now maybe Mike Davis is the number 1 guy. A lot of people in a lot of sports shows were saying that it's a 1.5 on your power ratings to take the Panthers down from this injury. Absolutely wrong. As a matter of fact, the Panthers have gotten better in most people's power ratings, including mine, with Mike Davis playing just fine right there. So lots of perceptions were wrong on the Panthers because of that. I wish I had an inclination that could be true, and I didn't follow through on it. So that was my mistake, calling out some trendy BS all over the media, all over the sports media, what people think. The Panthers are just fine without CMC as long as they keep using Mike Davis the way he is and as long as he stays healthy. The Jets, one of the worst teams in football history, maybe. They're pretty low on my power ratings. I believe I have them 10 points worse than the average team, and I'm not even sure if I'm low enough on them, but we were on the Cardinals -6, and we're happy to win that one. The Eagles should have covered against the Steelers. They didn't. The Washington couldn't really move the ball at all against the Rams. Kyle Allen got hurt right away, so I don't know how much that factored in, but they did bring in Alex Smith, which drew the crowd cheering, but all he got was 37 passing yards, 9 for 17. He couldn't do anything either because he was just getting killed out there. No pass blocking whatsoever for Washington. Ravens took care of the Bengals like the Bengals didn't exist again. The Texans finally got their first win, so congrats to the Texans. The Dolphins destroyed the 49ers. That was an interesting spot. Now the Niners, everyone was fading the Niners when they went to the Giants. They blew out the Giants. Everyone started fading the Niners when they went to the Jets. They blew out the Jets, right? And this is all with the same type of injuries. Garoppolo out, one of those games. They lost Bosa and Solomon. Bunch of other guys out. And then what happens? They look way better than they should be. And then they go home and they get their asses kicked against the Dolphins.
Unreal.
It's weird how sometimes injuries show up later. They don't show up the next immediate game, even though they're playing with the rookies. Kind of like it happened when they went to the Jets and played. Then they lost more players. Bosa, Solomon, like I said earlier. And then they beat the shit out of the Giants. 36-9. Right? At the Giants. And then they go home against the Eagles. Outgain the Eagles, but lose because of 3 turnovers from the quarterback. And then they just get their asses kicked by the Giants at home, too. It's just strange how teams sometimes play over their head right when the injuries happen and then later start fading. Something that we're going to concentrate on more for the NFL. But that's pretty much it here. Want to go over just a few of those teams that are 4-1. Baltimore 4-1, but definitely not overrated. Matter of fact, a lot of places have them as the best team because Kansas City just lost. Kansas City has their number, and Kansas City probably should be favored if they play each other again, especially on a neutral field. But, who knows? Kansas City steps it up and they slow it down. Hard to predict with them. Green Bay, 4-0. They're in the top 3 or 4 of many people's power ratings. They are in mine. The Rams, 4-1. That is a for real 4-1 team. I thought they should have beat Buffalo, and we got lucky to cover that one because of a horrible officiating call at the end of that favored the Bills. But at the same time, the Bills at 4-0 are pretty for real too. They should be more at 3-1, but still, this team is for real. Pittsburgh is another 4-0 team that I have pretty much top 8. Maybe I'm a little low on Pittsburgh yet. The thing about Pittsburgh is that they've played a pretty easy schedule. So it's hard to get a really good grip on them. I do know their defense is elite, and I do know Big Ben is looking really good right now. So they're for real. Let's move on to some of the ones that are not. We have the Chicago Bears. My favorite team is 4-1. That is a very fake 4-1 because I literally have them pretty close to Minnesota in my power ratings, and Minnesota is 1-4. This Minnesota team is better than 1-4. As you can see how they got close to beating Seattle. They just kind of crumbled at the end of that game. That's just because their defense is so young. I expect Minnesota to get better and better so they can go 6-10 to once again be just mediocre enough to not be able to get a good draft pick for a quarterback.
You like that? You like that?
What do you think? They'll draft like 12th or something? Maybe 13th? What's that going to be? Like a Kyle Trask type player? Maybe Ian Book if they're lucky. You know? Certainly is not going to be Trevor Lawrence. So, there you go. Another team that's one win, 3-1, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're better than their record. They just can't seem to put a full game together. And they were extremely injured throughout the beginning of this season. I expect them to get a little bit better when they get some of these guys back and when some of the guys that filled in get a little bit better at playing football, because there's some guys like Alshon Jeffrey that's been there a long time. You know, there's some guys like Miles Sanders that's very capable. They still have a good defensive line over in Philly, for sure. Rodney McLeod is there. He's good. You know, they should be better than what they're doing right now. Darius Slay's good. You know, I expect the Eagles to get better here, and as soon as they get a little bit healthier. But 1-3-1 is not a comfortable position. But if I'm wrong about Andy Dalton, then it's a lot more comfortable than you think, because Washington and the New York Giants in this division are absolutely garbage.
That's terrible.
This division in the NFC East is probably the worst in football. I don't know which division could even come close to these records here. The Cowboys 2-3, the Eagles 1-3-1, the Giants 0-4. Or sorry, are they 0-5 now? The Giants 0-5, and the Washington Redskins are 1-4. You know, that's pretty bad. The best division in football is the AFC North. Cleveland winning outright, 4-1 Cleveland. They're pretty for real at 4-1. You know, they have a lot of talent on that team. They're playing with some swag there finally. That's why we bet them to finish second in the division. Does Pittsburgh now have me worried about that? Yes, absolutely. But these teams are playing each other this next weekend here for week 6. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen this game. The last team that has a bad record that I think should be better is the Lions at 1-3. You saw them go to Arizona and win outright. You know, yeah, they lost against a desperate Saints team, but they're also extremely injured at corner and safety, and those guys are going to start coming back. I expect the Detroit Lions to do a lot better and to come back and compete a little bit more in that division. The NFC North, where the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings are, and the Lions are a better division than it looks to perception. It looks to their record. Now, one team that is undefeated here, the last one I want to talk about that shouldn't be undefeated, is the Seattle Seahawks. And I think they're a little bit...
You are fake news.
I think they're a little bit fake news here. They play too many close games. And yes, Russell Wilson is winning at the end of these games. But as soon as they play a defense with a pulse, it could be trouble for this team. Okay. They played Atlanta. Atlanta's got one of the worst defenses in the league. They played New England at home, where they should have lost that game had Belichick had a better play for Cam Newton that game, and New England was just getting their feet wet by then. They played Dallas, who's the most injured team on defense, possibly, and they barely won against Dallas. Took to the end of the fourth quarter there. They played at Miami, whose defense still isn't good, but getting better, and they played Minnesota, that has the youngest defense. All right, they're going to have to play Arizona coming up here in the next after their bye week. So I expect something out of Arizona, and they're going to play a possibly healthier San Francisco coming up. All right, that's going to be interesting. They're going to play a Buffalo Bills team that's better. They're going to play a LA Rams team that has a solid defense. Back to Arizona. Philly might be healthy by then. So at the same time, I love Russell Wilson. He's probably deserving of the MVP, but I still think that they are.
You are fake news.
Let's move right into college football week 6 misleading final scores. We're going to start out with Louisville. They outgained Georgia Tech 471 to 450, yet lost 46 to 27. A 3-0 turnover ratio killed them this week. We're going to look at Temple. They outgained Navy 407 to 299, yet lost by 2. A 1-0 turnover ratio, and Navy's fourth down conversions did them in. Navy didn't miss a fourth down conversion. That's what those option teams do. 3 yards in a cloud of smoke, 4th and 1, and they get it. It doesn't work against the best, the better teams, the better Power 5 teams, but that's how option teams win against everybody else. Virginia outgained NC State 405 to 363, yet lost 38 to 21. A 4-1 turnover ratio hurt bad. TCU outgained Kansas State 342 to 289, yet lost 21 to 14. A 3-2 turnover ratio did them in. UTEP outgained LA Tech 261 to 210, yet lost 21 to 17. Just a 1-0 turnover ratio here. UTEP is better than they were last year. Just remember that coming into this week. Mississippi State outgained Kentucky 290 to 156 and lost 24 to 2. A 6-1 turnover ratio took care of that garbage.
Not cool.
Time for college football motivational spots for week 7 here. Letdown spots: Texas A&M at Mississippi State after beating top 5 Florida outright. You have Missouri hosting Vanderbilt after upsetting LSU. And you have Boston College at Virginia Tech after beating Pitt outright as a pretty sizable dog. Get up spots: Arkansas State, after losing to Coastal Carolina a few weeks back, needs to get up. Tennessee hosting Kentucky after that Georgia reality check. Louisville at Notre Dame after an embarrassing start to the year. Both LSU and Florida are coming off losses here, so both of these teams are going to be motivated for this game. Same thing with UCF and Memphis coming off of losses. Both teams are going to be motivated. So, this means no factor into the line if you think a team's going to play a little bit more out of their minds. Florida State hosting North Carolina needs to show something this week. They kind of did the second half a little bit against Notre Dame. Pitt at Miami after 2 bad 1-point losses in a row. That's got to be taxing on this team. Miami lost to Clemson. That's fair and square. So it's not like I'm going to include Miami as a spot that they really have to get up for. They're already 14.5-point dogs, and they're doing fine for what they are. Look ahead spots: Notre Dame could be looking past Louisville to Pitt. Very, very possible there because Notre Dame and Pitt have a little bit of a rivalry. Missouri could be looking past Vanderbilt to Florida. That makes this a sandwich spot after the LSU win. Oklahoma State could be looking past Baylor to Iowa State is very possible. I hear this game might not happen, though, due to COVID concerns. Cincinnati could be looking past Tulsa to SMU. Very possible. SMU is undefeated. And SMU could be looking past at Tulane to Cincinnati. So both these teams are in the kind of a similar spot. Let's look at NFL Week 5 misleading final scores in Week 6 motivational spots. Misleading scores: the Bucs outgained the Bears 339 to 249, yet lost 20-19 and a 1-to-1 turnover ratio here. No adjustment. I'm not moving the Bears up for that or the Tampa down, but I will move Tampa down slightly for losing Vita Vea for the season with an ankle injury. That hurts. Vita Vea was their run clog in the middle of the trenches there. He might be worth half a point at least. Pittsburgh only outgained Philly. I guess I said Philly did outgain them, but no, it was close. Pittsburgh only outgained them 367 to 336. Yet they only won by 9 points here, 38 to 29. So really close in yardage there. And it's not like Philly's yards were garbage yards. So wanted to point that one out as well. And a big one that happened on Sunday Night Football, Minnesota outgained Seattle 449 points to 314 and yet lost 27 to 26, a 2-to-1 turnover ratio, and just Russell frickin' Wilson at the end of a game set them in. Motivational spots, letdown spots, Houston at Tennessee after finally getting that first win. That could go both ways, but I wanted to mention it. They could, Houston could be still motivated, but remember, they're on an interim coach. Miami at New York Jets is a letdown spot for sure. So, Miami, not easy to bet Miami this week. Get up spots. New York Giants hosting Washington might be their only shot at a W for a while. The Jets hosting Miami is their only shot at a W for maybe the season. And the Falcons at the Vikings need that W bad. Maybe Julio will be back. We'll see. But you're in a spot where the coach, poor old Dan Quinn, finally got fired. Defensive coordinator Raheem Morris has been named the Atlanta Falcons interim coach. So there you are. NFL motivational spots right there. Missed one, though. We have a look-ahead spot, just one. The Panthers could be looking past the Bears to the Saints. The Saints is their big division game. If they are listening to how bad the Bears are at 4-1, you wonder if this is a look-ahead spot for them. So be careful if you're planning on betting the Panthers. All right, my friends, time to give you a free play we'll go college football week 7 here. We're going to take Memphis plus 3.5 here, hosting UCF. UCF is obviously a very good team, a little bit better than I expected, but I expected Memphis to be the best team in the American Athletic Conference this year. You look at UCF, they did pretty well so far, right? UCF beat teams like Georgia Tech their first game, 49-21. Then they go to East Carolina and win 51-28. But then they come home and they lose to Tulsa, 26-34. And I watched that game, and Tulsa pretty much beat them up that game. That's what happened there. They have a 6.62 net yards per play on offense, and they give up 5.77 net yards per play on defense, which is good. 0.95 positive net yards per play. But when you look at Memphis here, Memphis had a tougher schedule. They took care of business against Arkansas State after a bad first half start. They ended up, stopping Arkansas State, and they didn't score. And then they played at SMU. So they only have 2 games on their belt. And that game at SMU was extremely one-sided from an officiating basis, in my opinion. Okay. Now they get the bye week, and they get to play Central Florida here. Central Florida is also coming off a bye, but Memphis is a home dog in this situation. The last thing I want to point out for this one is that Memphis is a little bit healthier than Central Florida. They don't have any injuries from recent, but Central Florida lost Nixon, one of their wide receivers, to a collarbone. He's questionable, possibly out here. They lost an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, as well as Williams, another receiver here. Memphis relies on their receivers like Marlon Williams. He's their best receiver. Trey Nixon is their fourth best receiver, but that still leaves them a little bit thin here. So I think there's plenty of ways that Memphis can cover this 3.5-point spread at home. That will be your free play, and we're going to make this one 2.5 stars. And of course, don't ever forget to
sprinkle that shit.
Let's get into a little fantasy football with our fantasy man, D Nasty. All right, now it's time to talk a little fantasy football week 6. And we are back to normal because our guy D Nasty is back. Dave, how you holding up, my man? I was gone for a week.
Good. Well, that's messing up a few of my fantasy football teams here and some key injuries this week too, but holding up pretty well though. Other than Fantrax tanking on us and not being able to do live scoring this week. I don't know if any of the other people out there use Fantrax. It's total shit this week. Sorry for the language, but I cannot see the scores of any of my leagues this week because Fantrax posted a post saying that they cannot update any live scoring because the place they use to do that is not up and running right now.
Oh my God, that's weird. It's funny. Yahoo Scores app, and I use that sometime with the Action Network and a couple others to check scores. That wasn't working well for college. I had to use a different thing to go over all my box scores this week, so that was weird. Weird week, man. People are just kind of flaking out. Strong survive. Who knows what's going on there, man?
Exactly.
Fantrax, God. But what's different this week? We should talk about is waiver wires in a lot of main leagues are getting pushed back. I know Yahoo's pushed back, ESPN's pushed back. So ours used to process at midnight on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning / 12 a.m. whatever, and now they're pushed to Wednesday, Thursday, right? 12 a.m. Thursday morning. So that's interesting because we have another game this week, don't we, Dave?
Yep. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night game for once. This is one of the first times ever, I think, that I had a Tuesday night game.
Yeah, I know. Never seen football in the NFL on Tuesday except for, in college and Maction. So that's very strange. And you wonder if you're going to see another Tuesday game or maybe a Wednesday game this year. But it does definitely throw things off. A lot of people were saying, hey, if this Tuesday game don't happen, here are contingent players. And I'd be like, I can't be giving you contingent players. Just don't start them if you don't think it's like somebody not in the injury report that's a late scratch. That happens all the time,
Exactly.
It's too hard to manage when that happens, as a league manager. So I don't know if some people allow for it, but the programming is just not there in most fantasy leagues to do it automatically, and just to have to keep track of that is absolute hell. But this is was all warned beforehand, and this is why you and I discussed having expanded rosters and expanded IRs. It's like it's next best man up, and
exactly.
try to plan for it the best you can. There's been multiple times we've been burned on guys that were probable that didn't play, and we've been burned on guys that were doubtful that you really could have used that play and had huge games, right? Heck, I've even seen people listed as out come back just very, very seldomly, but you've seen that before, right?
Yeah, we've all been there. So just to note, though, the actual game tomorrow is going to be the Titans versus the Bills. So if you do have any of those players, they still will be playing tomorrow night. And then another game of note, the Chiefs and Bills game that was scheduled for Thursday night, that is moving to next Monday night.
Yes. Yes, next Monday night. And it's because the Bills would have one day of rest.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy enough. So the league's adjusting a little bit, which is interesting. I just can't wait till all this crap's over. Even if COVID's around next year, maybe you realize that none of your players are hurt.
Exactly.
Well, let's get right into it then, my friend. We have some bye weeks coming up, Dave. What's up?
All right, great. Well, we have some key players out this week. We have 4 teams on bye this week. One of the first teams is going to be the Seahawks. So you probably do have Chris Carson or Russell Wilson, who's been on fire. DK Metcalf, and then Tyler Lockett. So those are some key players that you want to make sure you take out of your lineups this week and find replacements for them, which will be hard to replace Russell Wilson right now. He's definitely the MVP right now of the league. Chargers, Justin Hebert. Keenan Allen did get injured, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. And then Joshua Kelly, if you're starting him. Eckler is out, so you don't have to worry about him. But there's some key players on the Chargers as well. And then Saints, a lot of key players on there. Michael Thomas, who is still out with injury, but he's going to be out another week on bye. And then we have Drew Brees, Emmanuel Sanders, who had a great game tonight, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, maybe you might be starting. So definitely the two biggest ones there are going to be Brees and Kamara. And then we do have the last team, the Raiders, who actually beat Kansas City this week in a surprise win. But Derek Carr, who's been playing well. Josh Jacobs, who's a stud running back for them. And then a couple of their young receivers, if you have them. You probably are not starting them at this time, but in case you are, we have Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow, and then possibly Brian Edwards once he's back from injury. So those are the players you want to take out of your lineup this week for the buys.
All right, my man. Good call. And Justin Herbert is what you meant to say. We just watched him and talked about him. He's looking good, and he might make my waiver wire, Dave. Why don't you get right into key injuries?
All right, key injuries. There's a couple key injuries of note. Dak Prescott, very sorry to see that injury happen. My thoughts and prayers go out to him. Very gruesome injury for Dak Prescott. He's out for the year. So definitely we'll talk about on the waiver wire how to replace him. But he was one of the major ones. Another one of the major ones, Dalvin Cook, left Sunday night's game with a groin injury. So he's going to be questionable for this week. He's getting an MRI today. There's no further update yet on him. One of the key IDP players, Chandler Jones, he might be out for the year with the biceps injury. Their star pass rusher for the Cardinals. Some other smaller injuries of note, Kyle Allen, who was starting for his first game for the Redskins, left the game with an arm injury. Alex Smith, congrats to him, coming back from that gruesome injury as well. Took the field for the first time since that gruesome injury back in 2018 in November. And then we did have wide receiver Sammy Watkins left with a hamstring injury. Kiev's favorite receiver here, A.J. Green, suffered a hamstring injury.
You have to rub it in.
Guys.
He's not my favorite no more, Dave.
What's that?
He's not my favorite anymore. And as a matter of fact, I think the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals like him too much either. With one target this week.
Anyways, he's gonna be out for a while. I think
he's sitting right next to Cortland Sutton. Let's just say, right?
Yep. But anyways, Deontay Johnson, the young receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was ruled out with a back injury. Tonight, Keenan Allen did go out with a back injury. We're not sure how serious that's going to be. Probably more information. We'll just watch that the rest of this week. But he might be questionable for this week as well. And then the last one I had here was going to be Baker Mayfield suffered a minor injury. X-rays came back negative on his ribs. But that's one you want to just keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, he's banged up for sure a little bit. Is Mike Williams back for the Chargers? Did he play much? I didn't notice.
Two TDs tonight, so I think he's fine.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's what happens when your kids are running around. So good. Yeah, he's owned though in most leagues.
Yes.
Yeah. So probably he was banged up a week or two, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I can't remember. See here, I have everybody you said, and good call on Deontay Johnson. That was weird. And someone had a big week, Dave, because of Deontay Johnson out, and I have him in the league. And it's just the worst when you're looking at your bench and you see this guy with 40 freaking points, man. And you're like, oh, wish I knew. At the same time, there's no way you could have known that Chase Claypool would have 4 TDs, 11 targets, and 110 yards receiving. One of those was a rushing TD. Just wow. He's going to be hot off the waiver wire this week.
Yeah. And this week.
Yeah. And even if Deontay Johnson is back, you know that they're going to give him more targets now. That's what I think. You have a pretty dang good tandem of receivers in Pittsburgh with Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and Deontay Johnson, I might say.
I don't feel Washington either. He was actually a pretty high regarded receiver last year, actually, even.
Nate Washington's supposed to be better, but yeah, he seems to be brushed aside a little bit. I mean, I want to own those three over Nate. But then you have Eric Ebron there, and you wonder if he's going to be punished. He fumbled a little bit last game, dropped some passes. One was almost picked. That was a little bit weird with Eric Ebron there. So Chase Claypool is the number one waiver. Alexander Madison is second because he's going to get more time with Cook banged up. Is Cook out for this week? I don't know, Dave. Is it?
They haven't said yet. There's an MRI today, and they haven't said anything about the MRI that he's getting today, so there's no word on that yet.
Yeah, Delvin Cook is, such a huge runner and was maybe leading some leagues in fantasy until this happened. But Madison ran great. 40% rostered in Yahoo leagues for Alexander Madison, so he's out there. Ryan Fitzmagic, I've said him probably enough. This is probably the last week I'm going to save him, but looking hot for the fish at the 49ers this week. And now guess where he gets to go? The New York Jets. We'll talk about that later. Justin Herbert looked really good tonight for the Chargers, so he's a guy that you want to pick up. T. Higgins, 8 targets last week with A.J. Green down especially. Green is just not happy over there, so they're probably going to target him even more. He's the man now, I think, in Cincinnati. Well, Boyd is, but he's close. He's going to be competing with Boyd. Andy Dalton, that awful Dak Prescott injury. We saw his ankle turn to the side. I was hoping that it wasn't as bad as what they said, but it was. He's done for the year, and I saw it and I was like, ugh, this guy is probably out for the year, and he is, but he'll be back. This injury is somewhat common, they say, and they think he'll be back by OTAs. Dolphins, he's the defense. That's what I wrote. I was like, def. I'm like, why did I write that? Oh, defense. I don't really have defense on waivers too much, but they're playing the Jets, Dave, and I had to throw their defense out there just because they're playing the Jets. Last one I have is J.D. McKissick, running back. If you're desperate, Washington plays from behind a lot. They're going to throw the ball to McKissick a lot just because they're playing from behind. Who are yours, man?
I got some nice streamers at quarterback this week. Gardner Minshew. He's a nice streaming option. They play the Detroit Lions, who are a horrible defense against the pass. He's owned in 50% of leagues. Tannehill's another streamer. 47% of leagues he's owned. He's playing Houston. And Kirk Cousins is playing Atlanta. So he's only owned in 33% of leagues right now. So definitely get those guys in your lineup this week. Then stream them if you needed someone to fill in for a bye or for Dak, who went down as well. And then a couple other guys, too. Justin Jackson had 14 carries tonight for the Chargers with Eckler out. And then Joshua Kelly had 9 carries. So definitely want to take a look at those 2 running backs if you need running back help. Madison, of course, was one of my top pickups this week. And then Brandon Cooks, he's been dropped in a lot of my leagues. He's a guy you might want to take a look at as well. He had a huge week this past week. 8 catches, 161 yards, and a score. 12 targets as well. 4 more than he had over the last 2 weeks combined. So he's healthy now, and I think they're going to go to him a lot more now that he's healthy. I think he's finally healthy. So he could be a guy that could win you some leagues or win you some games the next couple weeks, and possibly your league if he becomes the go-to guy for Deshaun Watson. And their schedule is a very easy schedule going forward. They had a really tough schedule to begin with as well, so that could have contributed to his lower numbers. Henry Ruggs owned in 44% as well. He was dropped too after he was injured. He had a big day as well with a 2-catch, 118-yard performance, taking one to the house from 72 yards out. Big play guy, but he's going to be kind of like feast or famine now, so you never know with him.
Yeah, he only had 3 targets, Dave, and I noticed that. So, but I'll tell you, he's going to get those. Kind of like Deshaun Jackson was 3-4 years ago in his heyday, right? He was boom or bust, but there's a lot of booms there. There's going to be more booms for Ruggs. I like Ruggs there. I agree.
Yeah. And then another one, too, is I had Travis Fulgham from the Eagles. He's only owned in 3% of leagues right now. He had 13 targets, 10 catches, 152 yards, and a tutty. So you definitely want to pick him up. Their receiving core is all banged up still. Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, and Alshon Jeffrey are close, but only a few of them are going to be coming back this next week. So definitely, if you want to take a look at him, he's a nice pickup. He's going to be a hot pickup as well with Chase Claypool this week. And then Christian Kirk actually had a nice game this week for the Cardinals, actually. He's been forgotten about, only owned in 34% of leagues right now. So he's another guy you want to target as well on the waivers if you need a help.
It's not a bad call. They're playing the Cowboys there. Kirk should have a decent game. And Ward, it plays for the Eagles too, though, right? He's been doing pretty well over there, I think.
Yeah, but he didn't have as many targets as Fulham. He only 13 targets, and I think Ward only had 3 or 4 catches this past week, and he had probably 6 or 7 targets. So he didn't have as many as Travis.
All right, well, there you go then. And a little bit more than I had, so nice work. Non-starters trending up for week 6. Dave, why don't you start?
All right. Well, I'm going to go with a couple of teams right off the bat that we just talked about. The Dolphins. I do like that pick for the defense. I've definitely streamed them this week against the Jets. I'm starting Preston Williams and Devontae Parker this week, and Fitzmagic. Pretty much anyone on the Dolphins offense, and Myles Gaskin. Pretty much the whole Dolphins offense out there.
Might as well throw it out there.
So I'll throw that out there. But yeah, and the 49ers have just looked horrible. Rams have been looking good this year. They're 4-1. I like them. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Jared Goff. I'd still steer away from the running backs there, unfortunately, though, because that's kind of a committee right now. So I still wouldn't go with those running backs. But definitely, 49ers are really banged up, and they're horrible against the pass as well right now. So I definitely like the Rams, right receivers in aerial attack against them. And then Bears, I'm actually going to say it. Big Dick Nick. I like him this week against the Panthers. Panthers are playing well the last 3 games. They've won 3 in a row, but I do like the Bears and Allen Robinson and Nick Foles against the Panthers defense.
I don't know about that. The Bears are kind of in a spot where, they came off a big win against Tampa. They're going on the road. Carolina's D has been much better lately. They shut down 2 teams on the road just recently. They kept up with the Tampa Bay Bucks, and if they only beat themselves that game, no, that was the first. Was that the second game of the year?
No, that was the second because they just played Atlanta, and then Dante Jackson, their starting cornerback, who's all pro or not all pro, but potential Pro Bowler. He's out now, so he's going to be out this week.
All right, well, let's just say it's going to take some balls if you're going to play Foles this week. That's in my opinion. I think there's a lot better options out there. But I'll tell you, Carolina, they're better than I thought. They are.
They are a lot better.
I'm shocked the way they're playing, how they went to Arizona and upset them. They beat Arizona at home. They went to the Chargers and upset them, right? And then the Chargers are a better team, too, as you've seen them keeping up with the Saints tonight. So who did they just beat? Yeah, Atlanta. But it was a spot where Atlanta needed to win that game. They just went into Atlanta and shut the door on them. So I don't know, man. The Atlanta offense, they should have scored more points against Carolina. Man, that Bears game, I worry for the Bears, but here's what the Bears have going for them, I guess. The Carolina could be looking ahead to their Saints game past the Bears. So maybe you're right, Dave. Take a look.
and onward. So then the Vikings, I do like them against the poor Atlanta defense. Atlanta's starting linebackers at safety right now because they had no one left. Their whole secondary is just injured. So the Vikings, I do like Cousins. Jefferson could have a big week this week along with Thielen. I do like them. Washington, don't stay away from those quarterbacks. We don't even know who's going to be starting this week. It's a rotating door there, so stay away from them. I do like the Ravens. You're starting most of those guys, right? So I'll just talk over that game. Titans, actually, Ryan Tannehill, like I was saying before, I think he could have a good game against the poor Texans pass defense. I do like him as well.
All right, I agree with you with Cousins there. It's hard to start Cousins too, but they're in a great spot now. Kind of desperate. They're at home. They're in Cousins' time slot there, so I agree with you there for sure. I have a lot of the same guys. Alexander Madison, I think, is going. You should play him against the Falcons. I think you might have said that, but he's if Cooks even playing, I still think Madison gets half the carries this game, Dave. Right?
They're going to ease him back. Yeah, I don't think they're going to rush him back, even if he does play this game. I think they're going to split the carries a little bit this game, just in case, so they don't injure him more.
And I definitely have some of the same players that you did. I mentioned Preston Williams and Devontae Parker, but you're right. The whole Dolphins team should be there. I even have a really ugly game. Antonio Gibson for the Washington against the Giants D, and maybe Devontae Freeman for the Giants against Washington's D could be good plays. But man, this game smells next week. It's probably one you don't want to watch. Adrian Peterson, I think, versus the Jags might have a good game here. And I know he's splitting carries with Swift and Kerryon Johnson a little bit, but he seems to get his share over there at Detroit.
He does, actually. I agree.
He's going to have a good game against the Jags. And on the other side of the coin, Detroit gives up the most rushing yards. James Robinson, and I said him 2 weeks ago with you, Dave, he's going to have a good game versus the Detroit Lions. So agree with a ton of those. And I have Justin Jefferson, like you said earlier, against that bad Atlanta D. So I like it. My other one here is DeMarcus Robinson if Watkins is out. And Buffalo actually, believe it or not, has the 5th worst passing D, at least up to now, in the league. And they haven't played that hard of teams. You know, they played the Jets, Miami, the Raiders, I suppose, is decent on offense. But I expected Buffalo to be a little bit better. So DeMarcus Robinson would be an interesting streaming wide receiver if Watkins is out, Dave.
Yeah, definitely. Another one I forgot, too, is the Cardinals. I like all the Cardinals. The Cowboys have one of the worst pass defenses in the league right now, and they're giving up 30 points a game right now as well. So definitely Hopkins and Kirk, and then even probably Drake I like against the Cowboys, actually, as well.
Yeah, I wish Fitzgerald was doing more. He hasn't done enough this year for me to mention him again. You know.
Yeah, he's borderline droppable right now in most leagues, I think.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think he is. Busts. I'll start out with Baker Mayfield versus the Steelers. Just like how you mentioned he was banged up and had to get x-rays. I've had bruised ribs before, and it hurt when I breathed. When I breathed a little too hard, like when I laughed, it was painful. I don't know if he has bruised ribs, but if you're getting an x-ray on your ribs, there's something there. He got banged up this game, and he's going to get banged up versus T.J. Watt and the Steelers because they're just a bunch of beasts on defense there. So I worry for Baker a little bit. I mean, when he gets flustered, he can get beat. And because of that, I have Odell Beckham as a bust versus the Steelers. It's hard to not start Odell the way he's playing, but a little too much hype on him now. I think you need a good Baker Mayfield for a good Odell Beckham. Aaron Jones, I have, Dave. Sorry about that. At Tampa Bay. Tampa's got the best run D right now, allowing only like 55 rushing yards per game. This might have to be won through the air with Aaron Rodgers there. Joe Mixon I have versus an angry Colts team that's coming off a loss at Cleveland. And they messed up a few times. Drew Brees, what's his face from the Chargers? Phil Rivers threw a few interceptions, and he's pretty mad at himself, but if they get Leonard back, especially, Joe Mixon will be a bust. Miles Sanders, running back at Baltimore, is a bust for sure for me. And Tyler Boyd, wide receiver, versus the Colts, pass D. That's my bust, Dave. Who are yours?
This week, Kansas City's actually been playing pretty well on defense this week, so I'm going to downgrade Josh Allen this week as a non-starter, even though he's been playing at MVP level. Him and Devin Singletary, I don't like them against the Kansas City defense, even though they're playing at Buffalo, though. So that's kind of a wash there, though. So just keep an eye on him, though. But you definitely still probably starting him because he's playing so well right now. I do agree with you on the Bengals. Colts have one of the best defenses right now in the league. So Bengals, I'm going to downgrade Joe Burrow and all the receivers there, too, Higgins and Boyd. And then, like you said, with Mixon, too, I agree with that one, definitely. And then actually, the Broncos against the Patriots. The Patriots usually play better defense than you really expect them to, and they actually been playing pretty good defense this year so far. Belichick always has them playing well. I'm downgrading the Broncos as well due to that. Melvin Gordon, I'm downgrading along with whoever starts at quarterback, either Rippon or Driscoll, or they're saying Locke could be back potentially.
Yeah, he's questionable. Drew Lock is questionable, but at the same time, I find it extremely hard to start the Broncos. Good call on Melvin Gordon. I forgot about that. I have Gordon in a league, and unfortunately, he had that surprise buy. I had to switch him out the last day, on Sunday. But Melvin Gordon's just looking worse and worse. If we can trade him, I think he's a trade material right now.
We had two big games, though. He had 100 yards the last couple weeks. So, but now
Well, they play the Denver played the Jets recently, right? That was one of those games.
Yeah, but so you trade high right now on him. You could probably get a lot for him right now. So yeah, definitely be a good trade to trade Gordon away. But yeah, they're playing the Patriots. So even if Drew Lock's coming back from injury too, I don't like that matchup for him as well, especially with coming back for injury. So definitely I'm benching him. And then another one that I did agree with you on too, but you didn't mention was Kareem Hunt. Steelers are really tough against the run as well. They shut down a couple of star running backs earlier in the year. So Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, if you were playing him at all, I don't think you would be though. But Kareem Hunt definitely downgraded too against the tough Steelers defense. I don't like Wentz against the Ravens either. So definitely some of the same ones. I was on the same page as you, Kiev, on those.
All right, my man, sounds good. Now it's time for the nasty sleeper of the week, Dave, and I have Alexander Mattison, running back for the Vikings against the Falcons. He's going to have a big game, no matter what happens. So I like him as my nasty sleeper. Dave, who is yours?
Actually, it's kind of funny. I had a Viking as well, but it wasn't Madison. It's Justin Jefferson. I like the rookie.
Oh, there you go.
Our Falcons defense, their safeties are all out and injured, and their cornerbacks are struggling, and most of those guys are injured as well. So I'm going with Justin Jefferson as my D-Nasty sleeper of the week.
All right, Dave, I love it. Those are the two players definitely start. I have Madison in one league, and I have Jefferson in another league, and they will be flexed in minimum for me. Any last thoughts about this coming week, Dave?
No, just pay attention to all the game times and the changes due to COVID. Make sure you got those bye weeks taken care of this week and to get those guys out of your lineup.
All right. Thanks so much, my man. Everyone out there, if you have any fantasy questions, please feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Have a great rest of your week and go get some winners.